you know.
Yeah, and I'll record it just so that if anybody comes, they can jump in. And I'm happy to do a one-on-one with anybody. So I put it in my live class just so you can sort of see. It just shows up as a regular Turnitin to assignment. And you can link it so that the grade you put in Turnitin goes right into your grade book. So you don't need to enter it twice, which is great.
Right. How do you do that? Are you going to show us that later, or you show us that first?
I am going to show you how to do it. Yes.
Okay.
So when you set it up here, and I'll just go into, let me just move you guys so I can get into edit mode. This is my live course. So I was like, I'll put it in week 7. Nobody's paying attention in week 7. So when you put this in your course, it's going to show up whatever you title it. You'll have a start date of when submissions can start going. You'll have the due date of when it's due. The post date is not the latest time that they can submit it. The post date is when the feedback will actually show up. So you can alter that date depending on when you do your feedback. So if you did your feedback before December 15th, you can actually just click on it and you can change your date to today's date, and then that makes the feedback viewable for the students with their grades. So
you know, I never understood it. When Kirsty first got us in, when we were first doing Turnitin,
I didn't either.
We were told that the due date and the post date, just put it in like 2022 or something. And I didn't understand that.
Right. So I learned the hard way that when you put it in for 2022, your students can't actually see your feedback until you change the date to the day that you're posting the feedback. So your start date is... It's important, and because I was like, why aren't they checking their feedback? So when you put in your start date, you send that that's just a normal Turnitin Dropbox of when your submissions will be accepted to that Dropbox. And with flexible turn-in, you can set it in for the opening of the course, or if you only want them to submit something in a specific week, you can put it in a specific week.
But do you mind if we interrupt you with questions?
Oh my God, yeah.
Okay, because let's say the start date is this week, right? What day is it today? Today's
8th.
Oh, today's the 7th.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I can do that. I can make it today.
Start date, let's say the start date was last Sunday when the assignment was due. Let's just make it December 4th, right?
You want it due on the 4th?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So wait, well, you can't have the due date before the
your due date and your start date shouldn't be the same. Your start date is when the box actually opens, like the earliest students can submit their paper.
Okay. So I would say, let's say I'm making the start date the first day of the course. Let's say we have flexible submissions, make it whatever.
Okay.
Now, the
October 25th.
Okay, fine. If the due date was last Sunday, which is December 4th,
yeah,
then what if you have a student, like I granted a student an extension this week? What if she is turning it in late? We'll turn it in, accept it after the due date.
So
I think I had a problem with that one time.
Yeah. So if we go to update this Turnitin assignment, which is in the top, that gives you all of your parameters for how you have it set in your course.
Right.
So when you come down here and you have your submission type, the number of parts, the upload, display originality reports, of course, they never go back and look at it, but we want them to. What your grading options are, so whether it's a pass-fail or it's an actual grade. The assignment is where you can set when it opens, when it's due, and when your feedback will be available. It really should say feedback date, but it's from the UK, so I think it says post.
Okay.
So your originality reports, see where this says allow submissions after the due date?
If as long as you say yes, that's fine.
You say yes, and then for your reports, we always... I don't know that anyone doesn't. It will automatically populate to no, and resubmissions are not allowed. We, in the School of Nursing, usually say yes because there's a late penalty, so you can still submit it, it's just late. And then generate reports on due date. Resubmissions are allowed until the due date. So we do that. We do reports are available immediately, and resubmissions are allowed until it's due.
Okay.
And we do that. And so we say yes for those. And yes, to check against the internet, and we don't really exclude the bibliography because sometimes that's straight from someone else's. So your grade.
Really? So here's a question: I do exclude the bibliography because if they take a bib from someone else, how are you going to know? I mean, just because someone else used a source and they used a source.
You can set that specifically in Turnitin when you're looking at your similarity report. I go in and I check the box within Turnitin itself. And we used to have the option, let's see. You used to have the option here to actually exclude the bibliography and exclude quoted material and do small matches. Kirsty does like a 5% small match.
Yeah, 3 or 5%.
And I don't know if it's because we're updating this instead of creating it that it won't let me do it here, but right here, you usually have a drop-down menu where you can do what the percentage is.
Because I thought we were supposed to exclude the bib.
Yeah, because that's usually, even if you're lifting it, right. You know, and we eyeball it, so we know that it's a citation as opposed to a paragraph from somewhere. Okay. So if you're setting your class up ahead of time, and it doesn't do it in design, because the one thing is that your rubrics don't populate from one course to the next. They stay in a repository, but like if I went into design and I added my rubric to this, it won't show up in everybody's course because your Grademark is specific to you as a user. So like my comments, you're not going to see my comments. You can set your own group of comments. Turnitin has a standard set of comments. But like once you create your own personal set, that will follow you in any course you're in. So if you were course coordinator for one of my courses and you wanted to look at something in my class or I needed a second opinion on a paper, you'd be able to look at that student's paper in my course, but it would give you your feedback options in your personal settings that you like as opposed to mine, which is nice because then the things that you like to say to students follow you in whatever course you're teaching. It's not specific to design. So you could, once you roll over the course, here is where you can link your rubric yourself from the course. And you can look to see like which rubrics, and it talks about changing rubrics. And I'm not going to do this here because I've already got a paper ready to show you guys how to do it in the course. You can add your rubric here, or you can add it right when you actually start to do the grading in Turnitin. The rubric does not need to be in Turnitin for the students to submit the papers. It just needs to be there for you to grade. Does that make sense? And the rubric's already in the course. We always list the rubric separately. So they'll always be able to see the rubric, but this is your grading rubric. And then the other settings that you have is whether you show it or not. If you were doing some group project, you could set up groups. And if you wanted to restrict access, which we don't usually do for assignments. So once you save all of that, those are going to be your settings for the Turnitin itself.
Okay.
Other than for just looking at plagiarism activity. So when you go, so the student goes into the Dropbox, they submit their paper. So I submitted a dummy paper already under Darth Maul because he hasn't submitted anything this semester. He's failing my class once again. And because I uploaded an exemplary paper for this assignment, it came back 100% because this is actually a student paper that I have permission to use for future classes. So when you go into grade, you click on the paper and you'll be able to see the similarity report up here. You've got originality, which is the similarity report. You've got Grademark and peer mark. We don't do peer mark here at Delhi. We do originality. So because this paper came back at 100%, that's the first thing I do is I check it and I go, oh, let's just see what exactly is the same. Is it the running head and the cover page because how much variation do we have from assignment to assignment? Or as you scroll down, is it every single word in a paper and it was handed in from something, 2 semesters ago? And within Turnitin, if you have a plagiarism question, I could go here and I can request to get this paper from SUNY. So
have you ever done that?
I have done it because I actually had a student who handed me a paper that he had handed to Barbara Ann. Yeah, he handed me his ethics.
So wait, so what happened? You clicked, I've never done that. You clicked on that and what?
So when you click on submitted to SUNY College of Technology, and you click on student paper, and actually it'll probably open for me because it's my paper, it's my course. But if you look at like full source view, because it was my paper, it'll show up. Because before I had a student who handed me a paper that was, interestingly enough, an ethics paper. He plagiarized. He handed me 3/4 of a paper that he'd handed in to Barbara Ann. So when you click on that, it'll give you the option to, because this was my course, it's going to pull up the student's paper. But if it wasn't my course, it would pull up an email where you ask the professor, and you don't know who the professor is. And it just says, Professor Schiaffidoni is requesting permission for the student paper. There appears to be a similarity between paper in her class and a paper in yours. And as the person getting that email, you just have to hit reply and say yes, and that gives Turnitin permission, and they automatically will send the paper to the professor.
I've done it several times, and like one time I didn't realize that it was Becky X student, and one time it was Barbara's student, and then one time it was a student from SUNY. I don't remember which one, but anyway, from one of the SUNY schools, but not Delhi.
Yeah, it's
So what happened? Did you get it quickly, Elizabeth?
Oh, within probably like 20 minutes.
And so what happened with the student? Were they curtains for that student? Like what happened?
Oh yeah, they got a 0 on the entire assignment. They had definitely each time they had plagiarized somebody else's work.
Oh boy. Okay.
And the professor doesn't have to look for the paper. Turnitin keeps it. So Turnitin knows what the similarity is. So literally by getting the email and replying back, yes, please contact me if you have any other questions, which is I think what we all say. Turnitin then sends the paper to the professor who's requesting it, so that they can look to see, is it just a bunch of references that are the same, or is it really content? And for my paper with Barbara's student, it was content. He lifted 6 paragraphs from an ethics paper.
Well, you're just really giving them permission to release it from your class because technically it's your class.
Right.
Wow.
And so sometimes it's within our system, and sometimes it's at some school in some state that I've never even heard of. So then I know that it was really a good internet check. But so this will show what the match was for these. If you get a similarity issue. And, our rule generally is like 10% of correctly quoted material. And usually anything that flags higher than 5, I usually pay a lot more close attention to for that. The Grademark part is interesting. So I have not put in a rubric yet because I want to create one with you guys. But rubrics and grading forms, there are 2 different forms that you do. I actually do a grading form because it allows me to do comment and numbers that are not in a range. If you have a range on your rubric, like we do for the BSN rubric, you can put the range in, and I'll show you how to create one. But in creating this, I tend to use the grading form because it gives me more control over my comments and the sections of what they're being graded. And I literally take it from the rubric that's in the class. So you can hear where it says there's no rubric attached to this assignment. That's what you'll see when you first get into the class the first time you're doing this paper if you haven't set your rubrics up during rollover for yourself. So sometimes I completely forget until week 2 and I go, oh gosh, I have to put that rubric in before I start grading. But the rubric's already in the course. So the students already have it. This is just sort of my track changes version of it. So you go up here, this little wrench, which is the form manager. And it's going to give you an option to either create something new or use something that's in your repository. So Elizabeth, I was telling Cheryl earlier, if you create something in one class, it stays within Turnitin with you for every class you teach, whether it's 401, 403, 300. Turnitin is specific to the user, not to the course. So you can attach any rubric that you have. So you can create a new form or a new rubric. And for me, you can see these are from the old 401 class and the current class, because we don't do the health informatics assignment, thank you, Jesus, anymore. And so, but that's still in there. It still lives in my repository, and my case study rubric still lives there. This assignment was assignment 2. So I could click here, and you'll see that you put your title of what it is on the rubric in my class, and the explanation, and how many points it's worth. And if I add this to the assignment up here where it says attach, right? And I'm not going to attach it yet because I want to show you how to make one first since mine's already made. But as a course coordinator, you can make a form, and this is what I did with Patty, and it's what Julie and I have done in the past, is you can make your form. You can input it or export it. So you can actually send it to other faculty that are teaching if you want it to be super nice, and you could get them your forms. So this button here to import and export, I could send you my interventions rubric if you were teaching the class, and then you just need to import it into your Turnitin. Hey, Des, into your Turnitin stuff. So if you're going to make a new one, which we're going to pretend we're going to create a new grading form, you get this, which is blank, and you can put in whatever you want for criteria 1 through 3,000. You can add as many boxes as you want. You can type in whatever. For me, I usually put what the criteria is on the rubric. I put the description, and then in the criteria, just for myself, I put how many points it's worth. So that when they're getting their feedback page back, it looks so, criteria 1, let's just say it's, let's just say we're doing an APA page. And we want to make sure they have the cover page. And here's where you would put, the running head. And if your cover page was worth 10 points, I usually just put a 10 up there so that when it populates, I know how much it's all worth. And you can make each one of these your gradable criteria for your rubric, depending on how you do your rubric. So if you've got 5 things that you're grading, you'd have 5 points, and you can hit that plus button to add more criteria. You can just keep going on and on. It can be as long of a grading form as you need it to, depending on how many things are being graded. And you enter the form name up here, and that's what saves in Turnitin for you. So because I already have this created with this assignment, this is their interventions assignment. Am I sure that I want to switch? I am. You can see that I already have this one set up. So I have 3 problems listed and explained, and then this tells them what they're going to do, so that when they open their feedback, they don't have to go back to the rubric in the class. The rubric is right there and becomes part of their paper. So instead of us attaching it above like we do currently in Word, this puts it off to the right, and they can see it. 1 intervention per problem is worth 15 points. Outcomes. So I have a bunch of stuff down here, and then I put in a box for late policy because Grademark actually allows you to do negative math. So if you put in 10 points, 10 points, 10 points, the student gets 100 for content but handed it in 2 days late. If you put minus 20, it will change that grade to an 80. It does the math for you. And then there's a comments box. And the comments box is where you can put the summary of all your stuff. So we're going to attach this to the assignment, which is that link in the upper right-hand corner. And this will now go into all of Turnitin for that particular assignment. Now when we look at Darth's paper, you can see my rubric over here. And it says how much each thing is worth. And if you hover over it, it'll give you the explanation of what's in each section. So the students can actually pull it up once they're looking at their feedback again to see what the full definition of each of those criteria is. I do the overviews because realistically, we know that a lot of our students don't spend a ton of time reading the feedback. So this is where you'll put your stuff sort of at the end. Now, the quick marks is sort of the track changes piece. And in quick marks, that's that far left QM. I always think it's quality matters, but it's quick marks. And when you go to the quick marks section, these are your comments. So you can do a couple of things. If, let's assume Darth had set this cover page up wrong, we could take this APA cover, which is one of my personal comments, and I could just drag it right over, and it sits there. And when the student hovers over it, it says, this is not an APA cover page. Please see the manual for how to properly format. You could put the page number in there. You can edit this comment. You could add additional comments like you forgot your colon, or you can write whatever. These are the pre-populated ones. And if you drag something over that you decide, oh, you know what, the student covered something later, you can actually go in and just delete them and they go away.
Now, and you put those comments, you put the text in those.
Yes, but some are already.
They're not Turnitin words. These are your words.
Some are my words. Others are their words, and I'll show you the difference between mine and theirs. But like, I have great job with this section. Like if somebody wrote an amazing section and it's a great job, I'll drag that comment over and then I'll explain more. Good job with this section. Excellent point. Those are my creations. You can also comment. So anywhere in this paper, you can click and get a comment box. And you can free text whatever you'd like. Now, you can also, if you're the type of person that there are certain criteria on that are, you want to get a quick look at the paper, I can open this. And if I'm writing a comment about this cover page, I can actually go in and say that it's associated with the APA criteria. This note, if I write her a note and say, cover page looks great. And I save it. And I've now identified a criteria with it, which you don't have to. If I go here down below, which is the second section, I can actually see on which page, how many comments are on each page. That keeps a running total on the right. And if I pop out page 1, where it says there's 1 comment, it tells me what comment it is. And if I want it to show on the paper, it'll highlight where it is. So you can do a lot. The student can do a lot. They can see all of this when they open their stuff. When you also have a voice comment option. You can do voice to text. You can leave a voice memo about this up to 3 minutes long, and it will put it right into this cover page.
So that I like. I think that's,
I love that.
That's like doing a WhatsApp. You know, it's easy and it's that's very nice.
I did audio feedback for a couple of my assignments that were not Turnitin assignments this semester, and they liked it. But yeah, you can do a 3-minute voice comment right there. So that's pretty neat. You have that option as well.
Go back to, how did you save your comments? Like you said, you saved them because you use them all the time.
I'm going to show you how to set that up. Yep. So in Quick Marks, if you come up here, back to the wrench, your wrench is sort of how you do your management. Yes, they figure we need a fix-it box. Quick Marks gives you automatically, everybody will have access to commonly used phrases. And it tells you, if you click on it, like awkward, and it tells you exactly what it's going to say to the student. Consider rewriting, and it comes under commonly used composition. I added it to my personal ones. So you could select, you can make your own personal bank, which will show up on all of your papers, or you can just go into theirs and see what they do a lot of things like weak transition, and they explain what a weak transition is. So you can just drag that weak transition comment over, and it explains why it's not a strong transition sentence.
See, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the way that we have them listing their appendix, so it's not an appendix to make Grademark go crazy or their submissions go crazy, so that we can use this and make it a whole lot easier on us, because we end up saying the same things over.
Well, and that's what I said to Cheryl. If there's stuff that you find yourself constantly correcting, I'm constantly correcting cover pages, reference pages, formatting. It's the APA stuff. And while I don't want to have to type 19 times how to format correctly, this actually gives sources on improper citation, and it brings them to a plagiarism source. From a composition standpoint, you can go, and if you have to, if it's fragmented, it tells you what a fragmented sentence is. If it's a tense shift, if it's
can you open up one? Let's see what that fragmented thing looks like. Let's see what that looks like.
So can you see on the right-hand side? So it says it's a phrase or a clause that's incomplete. It actually gives an example.
I like that. I think that's good.
It's got some nice grammar that we don't, talks about, like, it needs a topic. Like, a well-organized paragraph supports or develops an idea. The topic paragraph should explain the thesis. Like, it explains stuff from, it talks about vague things, that there's a vagueness in the paper, which I think we see a lot. And we don't have to tell them this. They tell them really nicely. A paragraph without much detail might seem a little sketchy. It's strengthened when your claims are supported. That's just composition stuff. And there's 21 of those comments that you can use.
I like that. I think those comments are, I'm not going to make those big comments each time.
Nope. Composition for citation, it actually takes you to how to citation. So instead of saying, this should be cited this way, I've taught you that in 300. I don't need to be teaching you it in 401. Yeah. But if I drag and drop that cite, which says it's improperly cited, use the link below to find information regarding citation styles, it'll take you to a source. Yep. Formatting is all on the layout, which we see a lot. Capitalization errors, improper citation, italicized, moving it to the left, indenting a paragraph. So it talks about like a new paragraph, like when you get those huge run-on sentences. So it gives a lot of grammatical stuff that we do a lot, like lowercase. It tells you just this should be a lowercase. It does punctuation, because some of our writing is not great, but like when they're missing a quote. Talk about quotations. It tells you how to use them. Talks about how to do a block quotation. So a lot of it's the APA stuff that I tend to see them get wrong the most. Usage is sort of the, to be or repetitive. Like
I like the there, and there.
That's in there. There, and there.
Oh, I love it.
Helps you understand basic grammar. Yep, and it talks about like two, and two. It talks about a word choice, like word choice error. So it's sort of like trying to find a fancier word, but the one you picked was wrong. Your and your. So the easy things. And then you can add any of these. You can make your own set. So you can create a set. So for me, I have in my personal and in 2016, I have two different sets. But you can create a set here. And so I made one, and I literally took all of these and put them into one so that you don't have to go back and forth, and added them all into my own set. And it says, this is my active set. So you can make.
What we're looking at now in the middle is your active set?
Yep. So I've taken the commonly used, the composition marks, the formatting, and the punctuation. I've taken all of theirs, and I've added some of my own.
That would be
So you
great.
only have to go into yours. That makes sense.
right? So then I don't have to go back and forth like, oh, this is the composition thing. I need to go to the composition Grademark. You can create your own set. And so when you make your own set, you can click any of these to make your own. So when you go to sets, see this plus button up here? If you hit that, we could create Cheryl's personal, which means this is the one you're going to use. And when you hit save.
Do you drag and drop the stuff to get in your folder? Okay.
Yep. So to select yours, if you can move them right up. So you can move them in, and these have been shared, but you can set it down to collect. So if you select all of these, you hit select all, and then you can just move it into yours. So where actions are, you can hit add to set, and it asks you which set, and we hit yours.
And voila.
And now it's there. Okay. And you can do that with every single one of them. So now those 16 that were in commonly used are now in yours. Okay, so you won't be able to access this because it's in my QuickMark
I understand
right now, but you can set up your own you could have a box that's just for your graduate work versus your undergraduate work, depending on what you say. You could have QuickMark Manager for certain assignments, although that seems, a lot of work. But if you knew that you had different parameters for those, you might be able to do it that way. So you can set any of these sets, and then you just highlight which one is your current one that is the one that's going to show up in all of your assignments. So I go in and I just do my 2016 because I took out some of the ones in my 2015, my personal from last year that I didn't actually need. And then once you've set that, it will all just show up here. So you can see with mine, those are all of mine and all of theirs sort of together. That's my most common that I use. But like I said, you could jump in, and when you do this little window box up here, you could go to composition if you wanted to, and it'll give you just the composition ones if you're having a composition issue. I just leave mine on my 2016 because I tend to use those the most. But you can create a new one at any point in time by going into the manager. So that's how you can do your mark. So as you're going through your paper, you can do one of two things. You can type a comment. Wherever you click, you'll get that text box. You can save it as a new quick mark. So if you find in some particular assignment, you've now just said the same thing 3 times to 3 students about the way a cover page is set up or the way that they didn't address something, you can make, as you leave this mark on this student, if you hit save as a new quick mark, it will automatically populate into your saved quick mark comments.
And how is that called when you save it as a new quick mark? What's the title of it?
So let's pretend one. Let's just say title for first page should appear here. So if you decide that she didn't have the title, even though she does here, and we decide to save it as a new quick mark, it asks you to make a title for it.
Okay.
And then it asks you what set you want to save it to. So it gives you a lot of option right in that moment of where you want to put it. And so we could just say title page, title missing, whatever you wanted to call it so you know what it was, and it saves.
So the first time you do it, you're doing a lot of saving, but after that, it's already in there, and so it's easier to do because pretty much everything you're going to say is you've already saved it once you've done it once.
Correct. And you can set it all up in the manager. You don't have to set it up in an actual paper with your comments. If you know that there are things that you say to a lot of the same students all the time, you can set that up in your quick mark manager, and then it's just there and saved as part of your set. But again, sometimes I'll write something to a student, I'll be like, oh, I think I've written that to a couple of you guys today. Maybe instead of repeating it, I'm just going to save it as a comment, and I may never use it again. Like I had an assignment last year and they weren't double spacing and they weren't using Times New Roman. And so I found that I was writing that all the time. So I finally just made it a comment. And now it's a comment that I can just drag and drop over. And you can write what your definition wants to be underneath it. So you can be as detailed or as not detailed with what your feedback is. Like with capitalization error, it's just an error. You drag it over and you go, okay, there's your error. And you can put it above it, next to it, near it. It doesn't, it doesn't line item over like it does in track changes. But the students for sure can hover over this and see what it says as they're going through their paper.
So here's my question. Let's say it's over a phrase. How do they know? I mean, they should be able to see what their cap error is, but you know how, like with the track changes, if they hover over it, they get that little dotted line where they can trace where it goes, which sometimes is confusing because if you have track change above track change, all the lines sometimes lead to the same road, you know, which
Right.
is confusing for them. But I'm just wondering, let's say you have like, I see up top where you have cap error and then you have something with the font. They're one on top of the other in the third row.
Yep.
So how do you, let's say you have a whole bunch in one area, so they don't even know what they have there. I find that confusing a little
Well,
bit.
so they can view, so over here where it says print download, where it says get class access for iPad or information, down the bottom left, this is instructor view and student view. So the students can't see the information about the paper, but for us, we can actually pull that up really quickly, and it tells you when it was submitted. It tells you how many times it's been submitted. It tells you words and pages and overall similarity, and it tells you when the grade marks are in there. So this is a quick capture for you, just because I know some people, like I know Jill has word count parameters. If you went to that, but more importantly with the overall originality, it's in here as well. But if you go to the print download, and I'm not going to print it, you can download the original, but if you download the current view, which is what you're working on, which has your feedback, I'm going to show you what it's going to look like when it.
Okay.
This is how students can, if they didn't want to review it here through Turnitin, they could actually print it and save it, which I recommend they do before they leave the class. Most of them don't do. So when you open the paper, this is what the student will see if they open it. And as they scroll down, you can see comment 1 is here. Comment 2 is there, 3 and 4 are here. And so when they scroll, I'm going to scroll so don't get dizzy. When you scroll to the end of the paper, you can see once we put in the comments and the final grade in the actual grader, it'll tell the final grade, it'll give our overall comments here that are not the specific criteria, like I do a summary comment at the bottom. And then here they can see their specific feedback on every page. This sort of helps them space it out. And they can download it and they'll see it on the paper as well. And then this is the actual rubric where they can see what they got in each section. And I'll show you what that looks like in Grademark, because most of the students do not open this in a print form. Most of them are looking at it just in Turnitin themselves.
Lori, what if you have one of those rubrics like we have in some assignments where you have the 4 or 5 columns in a table and it tells you how many points for exceeding or meeting, or
if you can do, I'll show you how to do that form. So you would do that as that's an actual rubric. A rubric has a range and a grading form has specific concrete numbers.
Okay.
So I'll show you that. Let me close this. So I've got a grading form
Also,
on here.
will you show how you put your summary comment in?
Yep, I'm going to do that right now. So if you come back down here into this little tacked Tetris table where it says view, edit, rubric, scorecard for this paper, if you hover here when you're doing your grading, you can see there's no marks associated with this criteria because I didn't assign it to a criteria, because I know what it's not a big enough paper that I can't go back and look to see where the student lost points. But if you look down to APA, there's that note that I made about the APA. You can look at these, if you've got a longer paper and you're making comments, you can take any of the drag and drop comments and associate them with the criteria, so that when you go to do your criteria, you go, holy cow, I had 17 comments that were about the strengths and limitations of this paper. You know, I should probably look at that. And when you hover over it, it'll tell you what they are. So here you can write, like this student actually did a really great job. So you would write, you know, great job with your blah, blah, blah explanation. You can type all of this specific to this criteria. And once I put this in, you can see that she has an option of, you know, she gets 10 points here. So she gets 10 points. Here is a 15-point section. So we write her notes here. Let's say she earned 8 out of 15. And you're going to see the total score is changing as I'm entering the numbers. And any of your feedback specific to each criteria goes in this box here. So the students can actually, you can write specific related things. If you had a lot about evaluation, like if this section was dreadful and the student got a 2, and you had a lot more to say to the student than this box would hold, you can say something like, see paper itself for feedback if you made a lot of comments within the actual, within that section. So you could do something as easily as see notes in paper, because then that's going to bring the student back to that section of the paper to see if you had a lot to say. But you can actually, I mean, there's a lot of room for typing comments here. It doesn't really time you out. I mean, who's going to write more than 12 lines of feedback on any one section? Because then you get down the bottom. So yes, and their APA was, you know, a little wanky. So you can see right now, she's got a 68 based on what she handed in. You've given credit in all your sections. You can see your math. It adds up to a 68. Let's say she handed it in a day late. You can actually do this, and it automatically turns it into a 58. So grades earned and then subtracted for any late policies or whatever. So here's where you would write your comments, like, Cheryl, this paper was whatever you want to say about amazingness of this paper. And this is where you write all your general feedback, anything that you felt needed to either summarize it or explain any of your other feedback above if you didn't feel that that was done. And then I don't put a grade here because that does impact the overall grade, and it does it automatically.
Or, by the way, you have to redo your appendix because you didn't follow the directions.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a lot this semester, and a lot in that box said, please contact me so we can discuss prior to week 7's final project. Like, yeah. I wrote a lot of, I can see where you're going, I see you just didn't get there kind of things.
So this comment that you write at the end will then be transferred to the bottom where the final grade is?
This is the bottom. This is the final grade.
Oh, that's what goes up. That all goes on the bottom. I see.
Yeah, they get all of this. And so when they open this, they can see this grading form here on the right. They don't need to go into download to view it. They come right in and they see it exactly how we're seeing it. So they see these comments, they see these grades, they see where each section earned or didn't earn their points. They see your overall comment. And then when I hit up, and as I leave a comment here, see that orange line that saves it? It saves your comment. So it's there. It has like an automatic memory thing. When you go to the next box, it automatically saves. And then when you hit apply score to grade, you're going to look up here and you're going to see the grade show up. That just sent it to the grade book.
Wait, where the grade on the top. I see. I see.
Yep, and I'm going to show you how to get it into the grade book so it shows up for grading, but it definitely populates up here. And you can override if you had to, like if you had a student who submitted you a second assignment, or if you had some whatever that you worked out with them. And same thing, Cheryl, if you had somebody who was submitting it late, even though it's late, if you gave them an extension, you don't have to take that minus 10 points. It's not going to take it automatically. You know, you'll see it flagged as red for being late in the Dropbox, but you don't have to do anything with that deduction if you agreed to not do a late penalty for an extension type of thing.
Lori, do the students get anywhere? First of all, do they ever hear in UNIV that this might be the form of grading? And do they get an orientation to how to understand and find their feedback? They do.
So we've started talking about it in UNIV because we started using it, I think, last spring. And then, yes, there's a whole tutorial, and I included in my announcements on the first time that I say, here's your feedback. And it's super quick. They just go, I'll show you how they get it. It's 2 clicks.
Is it a YouTube that Turnitin puts out or what?
It is. Yep. And I'll show.
Did you make up something?
Nope, they did it. I have written down instructions for those that choose not to click the link. I actually write out the steps. But there is, Turnitin has a whole dearth of help for that. So that's your form. Now, if you wanted to do, if you wanted to change this and you can actually open a full-size grading form. If you wanted to just have your own form, I like to have the paper next to me because, you know, but if you needed bigger font, if you didn't want to wear your big girl glasses and you wanted it bigger, you can just pull the whole rubric up here for yourself to not have to type so small. You can do that bigger as well.
Wait, how did you just do that? Hold on.
See the big pop-out button to the left of intervention, the title of the assignment at the top of the rubric?
Nope.
Right under grading form, right here.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sure.
That just pops it out so that if you wanted to be able to type and not feel like you had to squint at your
for old lady eyes.
You're preaching to the choir. Yes. So you can bring that right over and you can do your whole thing there and you can see it. You can see if there's any marks associated with it or not. I generally don't associate the marks with the criteria because I know my assignments and I don't have a 20-point gradable rubric. But on more complex assignments, and you might, you can do that there. If you wanted to make this assignment a form like we talked about, right? You talked about
Yeah,
what
a rubric that's already done.
So if you
Okay.
go to create a new rubric, this is what you're going to see. Scale, scale, scale. So if
Okay.
you've got 0 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 30, however your scale is, you can edit this here to put in your criteria and to put in your scales.
So you can't just import our form. You have to create it in Grademark.
No, so Kirsty said that there's a disconnect between us being able to input our rubrics right now into Turnitin, which doesn't surprise me because Turnitin has some glitches that are beyond Moodle's capacity. But I think that's something that they're looking for in the future. But right now we can't just hit transfer because I think it's a platform issue.
And how would they see it? When the students open it up, it's like a narrow window on the right. How would they see the scale?
They can pop it out.
Oh, they can.
They
Okay.
pop it out the same way you do. Yep.
Okay.
And you can do, when you create your rubric, you can do it on a percentage. You can do it on actual feedback. You can do any of that when you create the rubric, when you do a new rubric.
You have to create it. Okay. All right.
So like case study rubric, let's see.
Now, do you do DQ? You can't do DQs like this.
No, because they don't submit their DQs to Turnitin.
Right. That's just an option. So it's only the assignments.
It's just written assignments for now. Yep. I wish
How
we
about
could do
PowerPoints? I
So
thought that
it'll read the PowerPoints. It will not read the speaker notes. So that is the challenge you have if you have them put in a speaker note.
Right. And certainly voice threads obviously is not going to work either.
Correct. What I did with my voice threads this year is I had them submit the voice thread to the Dropbox in the class, and then I provided audio feedback for their feedback on their voice threads.
You know what I do for voice threads? I answer the students, almost every slide. And then I go to the cover slide and I give them a private message, a private audio message.
Well, and I do similar, but I did it through the Dropbox in the course so that I can use Poodle in the class.
But I didn't even have to do that. I still gave them the rubric. I still gave them their written rubric uploaded to their Dropbox, but then I gave them that audio comment on the first slide.
In the voice thread.
And I told them all to go back to their voice threads and listen, which I don't know if they did or not. Some did because they commented to me afterwards, but that was in addition to the rubric, which was uploaded to the Dropbox.
Well, and I'll tell you, that is a nice segue for me to bring you to probably my favorite part of Turnitin. My favorite part of Turnitin is that once you've provided the feedback to the student and you post it and they can view it, and I'm going to go to my week.
How do you post it afterwards? I hate to be juvenile,
You just
but
change the post.
I always do it in the Dropbox. So
it gets posted. So see where this post date is here, where it says December 15th.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember, we said they could do early Turnitin, so they can submit it as early as October 25th. It was due the 4th. So let's say you get your 5 weeks and you're done today, and you want to post your feedback today, which is the 8th. You can go to the 8th. You can go to, let's say you're going to.
No, but I'm just looking for once you do the Grademark, is it automatically in Turnitin, or do you have to do something to get the student?
As soon as you hit add grade, and it saves, and you see that grade populate, all your feedback is saved. So
okay. I wanted to know. So you don't have to repost.
You can work on it throughout the whole week as long as your post date hasn't gone live yet. So I work on it. I keep my post date closed. I keep it set for the 5 days after the assignment is due, and then I work on it through the week. So I could work on the first 3 students, and they don't see that.
They won't see it because you haven't posted.
Correct. Yep.
Oh,
and then once you post it, everybody can see it. So I'm going to go into my my week 4, and this is my live class, but it's the only way that I can show you that the students who has checked their feedback and who has not. So when they had their assignments and I sent them back their feedback through Turnitin, let's see.
Week 7.
No, week 7 is my demo. It's not really, it's not for real there. Let's see. Where else do we have a real assignment? Oh, so let's do week 4, and some of these grades were less than desirable for these guys. But so if you go to your Dropbox here, and you want to say like the student, like you can't understand why the student made the same mistake in the next assignment and didn't correct any of their APA, and you're like, gosh, I gave a lot of really detailed feedback. When you come down here, you can see their grade. These have been completed. You can see when they submitted them. So you can look, see how that little person with the check mark just showed up next to Alexander's name? Let's see if there's somebody who hasn't. All right, let's look at Chelsea. Chelsea McConnell. Here, when I hit this little refresh button, which is over here next to the trash can, this refreshes any activity on her account. See the little person with the check mark that just showed up? When I hover over that, she viewed my feedback on the 26th at 5:39. So if you have a student that never checked their feedback, she probably did. She did not. So that's interesting. So she got 100 on her paper. She has never gone back in to check her feedback.
She didn't care.
She
got 100.
Right. And we
What
know
is-
that that happens, right? We know that we've got students that we have given feedback to that never went back and looked at their paper. So then when you have a student who makes the same mistake again, and you take all of their APA points for making no corrections, you can say, did you read my feedback from assignment 2? And when they say yes, this is sort of your check and balance for that. Like, when did they check your, like, you know, this student actually had, this was a Turnitin issue. It would never actually submit her paper. And even after I overwrote it, it wouldn't let it submit, which is interesting. But
So what happened?
this student, this was my AI. This student never went back and read my feedback that I wrote in the paper about the AI, and, you know, is no longer in my class. But so you can go in and check to see when they looked at it. And that's not checking to see if it's been submitted. That's after the post date.
And that one just did it the 5th.
Yeah.
Waited a while.
Probably because his final presentation is this afternoon, and he needs content from assignment 2 to do that presentation correctly. So he just checked it on Monday, probably to get some feedback around.
Well, maybe he checked it before that, but it overrode and gave the most recent date.
Maybe. I'm not sure if it does that or not. I think it's the first time it shows when the feedback was checked, because they can access it after that.
Okay.
But so it's good. It's better than viewing a viewer report, because then when you say to the student, did you actually see my feedback? The student says
Yeah,
yes.
that's interesting. That's very interesting.
Because we know that there are students that look in the grade book and never go back in. So you asked about how I let them know about how to do this. So in my announcements in the homepage, early on in the semester, but also later in the game, I tell them how to view feedback and turn it in. Can't misunderstand what that is. So I tell them before we even use the turn it in feedback that you'll see it and how to do it. So there's a tutorial here the Grademark does,
Okay.
if they choose to click on that. And then the other option is go to the Turn It Into Dropbox, click on your paper, click Grademark. So I talk them through the steps of how to get to it, but they can go right. This is a link that we can put in. And I think Kirsty's point, this is what it looks like. Tells them how to do it, tells them how to view marked.
Good. That's perfect.
Yep. So it tells them how to click it, where the box is, what the comments are, talks about the sidebar, the text, the paper information, marks. So it's for both faculty and students, but tells them how to view it. Tells them how to listen to a voice comment. Tells them that the comments is the default, so they'll see the comments straight away. So it gives them all of that of what they've done. So there's no way for them to say they can't see it. And this is also really helpful for like us. Like if I forget how to do something, it tells me, like, and it tells everything I just talked about, like how many points are in each criterion if you wanted to do that. And that, you know, if you didn't have a rubric in the course, like if we wanted to eliminate a rubric in the course, you could put it just in Turnitin, and they'd see the rubric right in Turnitin. I keep it in both places. You do have the option to attach your rubric prior to the course opening and having the rubric just be in the Dropbox in Turnitin. And Cheryl, you asked, this is what it looks like if you're doing that exceeding, meeting, nearly meets, and beginning. If you had an actual, this is what a rubric looks like as opposed to a grading form, which is what I use. And it tells you.
Right. Well, you had showed us, but that meant that the instructor filled that in. They put all that in. Right. But that's okay.
And I cut and paste. Literally, you can cut and paste, and it translates perfectly. I haven't had a cut and paste issue where it hasn't liked the Banco Hall to Turnitin text. It hasn't had an issue with that when I create those.
I mean, that looks very orderly to me.
It's super orderly, right? And if we had more things that were rangy, you know, and then when you scroll down the bottom of it, there's comment sections. So this shows what the similarity is, what the grade is out of how many, and then they can print it. So it tells them how to print. And, you know, we don't do e-rater, so we don't do automatic grammar for them. But that tells the students how to get it.
What's e-rater? What's that?
That's if we, and I don't know that we've purchased it, it's a grammar checker.
Uh-huh.
But I don't think we have that in our version.
So Lori, if we put this in our design course, we still have to send the grading rubric to whoever is teaching with us?
Yes, because the rubric doesn't populate from design. It only populates from you as the instructor.
We can put all the settings and everything, but
yes, you can set your Turnitin assignment up. You just can't set up the rubric itself. You can save it, you can download it, you can send it to. I sent it to Julie last year in an email version, and she just uploaded it in. She imported it and saved it.
So as long as we send it to them, that's really all they would have to do, as long as we've got it set up in the design course.
Well, that's if all your faculty in that course agrees to use Grademark.
Correct, which is why I set it up as because everybody's going to use Turnitin. Turnitin's not going to be the variable. It's going to be whether or not they grade that way. So that's why, yep, we set it. And, although I have to tell you, the first time I was like, oh my God, it's going to be so hard. It's going to take forever. It cut my grading time in half.
Could you, let me ask you something with two questions. First of all, Lori, when you, talking about the design course that you brought up, Elizabeth, if you're not sure if everyone's going to use it, can you still set it up in a design, in a Turnitin, and then one of the faculty, if they just want to do it the traditional way, they just don't have to activate Grademark?
So the only thing that you'd have to change, and that's the part I'm going to take you guys to next, is the grade book in the course. So because if you want
that's important.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So if you want it to populate to, so what I do.
Can we talk about that grade book now before we finish?
Yeah, no, that's where we're going next. That's where I'm scrolling down to. So when you go to gradebook setup, if you set it up in design, that you're going to assume that, like I always talk to my adjuncts before the semester and say, are we all using it? Am I the only one using it? And then if we all agree we're using it, I just set it up in the gradebook that we're using.
You find your adjuncts use it? How popular is this in the program?
Everybody has used it in my course for the last year.
Okay.
Patty, Julie, Jamie, the three of them have all used it.
Successfully.
Successfully. Yep.
Good.
So that's worked out really well. So, you know, my DQs live up here. My assignments are here. So I purposely put this down the bottom because it's in ungraded right here.
Right.
So you're going to move it. And you're just going to move it up to assignments. So
right. Yeah, that I know what to do.
But once you do that, that's going to move your grade into the grade book. And then you just need to put the weight of it. So it has it as 10% here. So you just move it. And
where have you put the weight? Where have you put the weight? Well, you don't have the weight in the Grademark. You have to put the weight in the grade book, you're saying.
Correct. Yep. All your work goes in the grade book. So if you decide that you're not going to use it, then you wouldn't need to, you could move it to an ungraded assignment. So you could still use the Turnitin Dropbox for the assignment. But if you didn't want the grade to populate into the grade book, you would just pull it out of assignments.
I also think, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems to me that if you're going to use Grademark in your class for an assignment, that you should use it for all of the assignments possible. And not have the students confused. Is my rubric going to be on the front page, or is it going to be at the end? Is it, you know what I mean? It's because there are some differences. Before you came, Lori, I don't know if you were here then, Elizabeth, we made a decision to paste the rubric into the front page of the paper rather than the last page, because the evidence showed that students want to see their grade first and foremost, and they want to see the feedback before they go down through the text of the paper. And that when they looked at the studies, students were reporting that they looked more at the feedback more closely when it was presented first. So many years ago, I would say this probably happened in 2009.
Yeah, it was definitely in place.
I was there.
Do you remember that, Elizabeth?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so we made that change. And now here Grademark is coming along, and it's kind of, it's not the total opposite, because you,
Oh, I think she froze.
I froze. Yes, she froze. Cheryl.
We lost you, Cheryl.
Oh, hello.
Oh, there you are.
Can you hear me now?
Welcome back. Yes.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah, I heard you saying, "Oh, she froze." And here I still don't need a code here. But anyway,
Oh,
yeah, but anyway, no, I was saying that in 2009 we did this. This is different. You know what I mean? Like students are socialized to look in the front for their feedback. Now this is having them look on the side or the bottom. I just think if you're doing it in one class, that you should have it all the way that way in one class. So you can make your announcement and say, in this class, we're going to use Grademark, and that's it. Because if you flip back and forth, I think it would be too disorienting for students.
yeah. In my class, anything that's written gets put in through Turnitin and gets a Grademark feedback.
Except DQs, obviously.
Except for the DQs, right? Because they're not submitted through Turnitin.
Right. Okay.
So
All right.
they get done in the traditional way, but all written assignments. So I've got 2 case studies, and I've got certificates, and I've got all of that goes into the Dropbox, and all of that has a Grademark option for it. The certificates don't; they're just pass fail. But the all of the case studies are on a range of 100, 75, or 0. You did it right. You did it sort of right. Or you didn't do it right at all. But that's still done through Turnitin. And it still gets gets a rubric attached to it that way. So and I think that a lot of us are tending to get away from DQ every week, and we're having more written assignments. And I think this definitely, like Patty and I were talking, and she said it definitely has been more instructor friendly from a grading perspective and from a time perspective, to be able to sit and still have 30-minute conversations with students one-to-one, even after grading. To explain it more in depth if they needed to, without feeling like it's a 60-hour work week. So it does. And I think the students, we know that the students aren't reading past the first or second page if they're happy with their grade. They barely read the feedback,
Well, you saw that gal with the 100. She never opened it up. Why
never
should she?
opened it. And I could have written something in there that was like, this is a beautiful paper, but we still need to talk about this. She'd never know. I could have told her my house was on fire. I needed her to call 911. I'd be dead. So yes, we know a lot of them don't read them. And like that one who read it on the 5th, he may not have actually read his feedback prior to Monday because he got a good grade.
Right. Look, we also know that some students at the end, this always floors me. I always go in when I close the class after I've posted the grades, because I don't close the class till Tuesday morning, and sometimes I posted the grades on Saturday, and I want to see that everyone saw their grades. And there's always students that have never accessed the class after Thursday or Friday of week 7, and you're like, don't you want to know your final feedback? I guess not.
Nope. I had one, I always like to watch the ones that play mathematical roulette in week 6 and 7 when they know that they've only got a small percentage of a grade left. And if they've got a good grade, I had one who didn't post hardly anything last week. And I wrote to her and I said, I'm a little curious, this has not been your baseline all semester, is something going on? And she said, no, I didn't need to make 3 posts this week.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you did.
Yesterday, one of my graduate students wrote me, she did terribly in the last assignment. She's a pretty good student. She just missed the boat. And she writes to me and says, I have a question for you. If I get 100 in the week 7 DQ, I couldn't believe it. If I get 100 in the week 7 DQ, my average will be 89.68. Will you round it up? It's like, oh, what? Are you really asking me that?
I had someone who argued a grade with me yesterday who had a 90 as we're having the discussion. And I said, I'm just a little confused because changing your grade isn't going to impact anything. You're still just going to get an A. Like you have an A with the grade you're complaining about. And he's like, it's principle.
It doesn't matter. There's a couple students in our program, up in the MSN, who argue if they get a 97, they want to know what happened to those 3 points.
Yeah, it's the lowest grade I've ever gotten in my life, Professor. I said, well, I'm sorry. It has to happen. Somebody always has to have a lowest grade. It might as well be me.
I think the students, we hear the same comments so much. I think students have their comments written in Grademark,
for sure.
And they just drag and drop them into the email they send to the professor.
I was just telling Elizabeth, I have a student who did the evaluation and said, it was really hard to read those 4 articles and then take the 27 question quiz in 30 minutes. And I go, well, it was 2 articles and it was 21 questions. So I'm not actually sure what quiz you took because that's double the work and half the numbers. I don't know what happened there. So, I think they just get wrapped up in their own, everybody wants a participation.
Nancy, have you ever used Grademark? Did you use it?
I've tinkered with it, but I certainly am not proficient at it. And I was really hoping to see this presentation, and I apologize because I thought it was at 1 o'clock.
Oh.
So I kind of missed it, and
It's okay. I recorded it.
You recorded it. It's very interesting. I have to play with this over winter break because I can't go into research and with all the intensity in that course and just like then focus on doing this. I have to set it up with my comments, and I'm going to try it. I think it's worth.
Well, and if you really want to play with it, ask John to set you up a sandbox with a bunch of dummy students so you can actually input the papers and actually play around with it.
I have a sandbox. I could do that. I think it's a good idea. I think that's a good idea.
The course has to be live. You have to have a live course in order to do the Trinity doesn't like closed courses.
Oh, really?
So that's why we're in my live class, because I put it in my sandbox and then I realized I can't make it.
Even if I set the dates in a dummy course, even if I set the dates to be live, it doesn't like it?
It did not like it today. So I tried to do that because I would have preferred not to be in a live class while I was playing with the grade book. But yeah, it's a turn it in thing. Turn it in says that you have to go into read only mode.
That's interesting.
If it's a non-active class. So I don't know if that's a banner thing but so John might be able to do it because I played around with it over winter session last year. So I've been using it for about a year now, and I will say that I really can't imagine having to go back to doing track changes again.
Okay.
Because you're able to just see it and you just drag those. You know that a good amount of what we're doing is the standard APA grammar formatting stuff. Even though
do you ever get comments from any complaints from students about anything?
I haven't actually. They've all looked at it. I've had a lot of conversations with students about the papers, and I actually am finding that I'm getting more conversation with them because I'm writing things like, please see the notes within the paper, and I'm happy to discuss this with you, especially around areas 1, 2, and 3. And some of them actually follow up and take that advantage, and then others, like you saw, checked it 3 days before the next assignment's due and kind of hope for the best. So yeah, right. I haven't had anyone say I hate it, I couldn't access it, I couldn't get into it,
or I couldn't, or the bubbles were covering up everything or something.
Nothing.
Like that.
No. And I said, you can also free text, which I really like. If there's just not a comment that exists for what I want to say, or if I want to say something that's very personalized about what they're writing, like, thank you for sharing your personal, I had a student who shared a domestic violence experience, and I was like, thank you so much for sharing, what clearly is a very personal and deep, situation. There's no comment for that. You just, you're just writing your own, but it's nice to have that free text option also.
Okay. It's interesting. I review for a couple journals, and one of them, I forget which one. It's either Nurse Education Today or Nursing Education. I don't know. One of them, then they send me papers. This is what they have. It's like the Grademark, where you hit where you want over the word, a bubble comes up, you make the comment, and then when you push, you click something else, it goes into like a little speaker bubble. And it's so funny because then when it's done, you look at the copy and there's it's almost like popples from Poplet, all over the paper, like da-da-da-da-da-da. And so it looks like, and then you just hover over it and it opens up the comment, but then it closes, it behaves itself. It's not like all the words are all over, but this it's kind of like the same model.
Well, and I tell students, if you're more of a visual person and you can just look at it quickly. If you're more of a tactile person, you want that paper in your hand, you can go to that print option and print it. And so now that we put those notes in there on that, now that we did that dummy mock-up, if that student went back, if Darth Maul went back into class and wanted to print out his feedback that I gave him, and he goes to current view, the current view is going to have all of my comments. And now you'll see when we open it and scroll down to page 14 that, of course, it's thinking. But when you scroll all the way down to the bottom now you'll be able to see it's 58 out of 100.
Oh, they certainly make it big enough.
Honest to God. But so you can see where all the individual notes are in each section now, where I typed my, oh good, it's snowing here, Cheryl. Just looked out my window. So it gives you all that, and then that's where your comments are at the bottom. So they can see it this way. It is viewable.
No, but that doesn't mean, but those on the bottom, they're not connected to the text. So I think there's like a disconnect.
Yeah, this is if you print it out, because you can see that, you know, if it's a student that actually needs to have it printed and wants it next to them, you can see the comments up here, but you can also still see them below in print form when it writes out.
Okay.
So
I'm
how
going
do
to
you
have to run, but thank you very much, Lori. This was really informative.
Thanks, Cheryl. And if you need help over break, you know me, I don't actually take a break, so I'll be
I'm
around.
sorry for asking so many dumb questions.
When I first got used to it, I asked 1,000. So you know what, it's, once you start using it, you're going to be like, this is the best thing next to sliced bread. So it really will. The first time that you don't spend 3 hours grading an assignment, you'll be like, oh my gosh, this was wonderful.
That sounds very good.
Yeah, it's an easy sell when you do it that way.
Thanks, Lori. I appreciate it. Bye, everybody.
All right, bye.
I have
Thank you,
two
Lori.
questions, Lori.
Yes, I have answers. Hey, Des.
Is there any limit to the number of words you can put in your comments that you import yourself?
The only time, you mean like when you're typing the feedback?
Yeah.
The only time I've been limited,
Your profile.
the only time I've been limited is in the bottom part, where the general comments are at the bottom, but in the individual sections, like where I'm typing right now under late policy.
I mean, you know, where you have your whole, your grade marks, where you click and grade the comments.
Here?
Yeah, those.
Oh,
Is there-
heck no, you can have thousands.
But is there a limit to the number of words for each one? Because
Like
I
the-
have some that I cut and paste that are like 4 lines long with instructions, right? That amount.
Let's look.
And then my other question is, so
I don't think so, because some of them are really very long.
okay, all
So
right,
if
that's
you-
fine.
well, let's just do a sample comment. Nope, I think you can make it as big as you want.
Okay,
Because this just lets me go and go and go and go and go. And then when you're done with this, I don't know if you were in the beginning, when you get to this part and then you save it, you are going to save this as a new quick mark if it's the first time you're doing this. Yeah,
Right.
you can basically cut in like chunks of comment here. And then if you save it as a new quick mark, it gives you the option to title it the way you want to title it and then save it under whichever set you want to use.
okay. And then my last question is, how do you download all these papers?
No, that's the beauty of this. You don't download any of it because it's through Turnitin. It's all here. So it's taken out that download, upload the rubric, give the feedback, save it, put it back into the Dropbox. This is what the student submits. And so I just click on the paper and it gives me the paper and then it opens up my rubric on the right once I put the rubric.
So my question with that is, 5 years down the road, when a student is not happy with the grade they got, and we have to present it, and they've changed they've updated Moodle yet again, and stuff goes away, what do we do then?
No, we tell them they should have downloaded it before the end of the semester, like we advised them to.
No, I mean for us, if we're defending a grade.
That I don't know. I mean, you have access to Turnitin and your old courses. So it's like right now I have a sample paper in a class from last semester and it comes up as read only. So you can still get in and see your comments. You can get back into Turnitin. I think Turnitin's got a 4 or 5 year time frame before they expire your class, I think is the thing.
So we can access that even if it's gone off of our Banco Hall?
Yeah, so like for me, I
When
went
they
in
change Banco Hall, my old stuff is gone from when I first started teaching.
because it's a different version of Vanco, but this is Turnitin. Turnitin is
Right.
an external server, so you can still get at it from Turnitin.
Okay.
And I quite frankly, and I keep putting it on the agenda. I keep thinking we need to have it on the agenda. Is what's the timeline for when you can grieve a grade? Like how long after you're out of the class do you get to complain about your grade still? Because realistically, it is burdensome to have to keep. You know, I don't keep my taxes longer than 7 years. Why would I have to keep your paper that long?
Okay. All right. Thanks.
All right, I have chat questions. Who's chatting me? Oh, Nancy. Can someone share the link to YouTube for the
No,
presentation?
I was trying to find it, Lori, and I can't find the actual link.
The link for once we're done recording, it'll digitize itself, and then it'll send it to me, and then I'll send it to everybody. It doesn't go on YouTube until we're done recording, and then Zoom has to download it.
We have a channel link for everything we've recorded, but I just can't find.
Oh, yeah, I can get that.
Yeah, the one for our actual channel, so she can go see everything we've done.
Right.
And I really thought I had it in an easy saved place to go find it.
Yeah, I probably thought I did too.
I probably reorganized thinking I was making myself smarter, and now I've lost it somewhere.
I thought you meant for today specifically, and I was like, oh, we don't have that right now because.
No, like for the whole channel.
Yep. This one.
So let's see.
I'll copy and paste it.
Because I really thought I had saved it somewhere, but oh, found it. It's an email still. Better late than never, right?
Nancy, do you want me to email it to you or chat it to you?
You could do either, whichever is easier for you.
If you don't mind sending it to me, that'd be great too.
Okay, I'll email it to you guys.
Thank you.
See, I found it after you started looking for it, Lori. It was just because you looked for it.
Exactly why.
Sorry for my lateness. Life just took over this morning, so I apologize.
Oh, that's okay. I've been having a challenging week adulting myself. No worries.
Seven. I've decided anything goes in week 7.
This is my breakfast and my lunch because I'm in presentations all day. Chocolate covered pretzels and some potato chips. So.
Hey, your sodium content will be great.
Uh-huh. All right. Any other questions? Because I'm going to stop recording before I share my snackage with the whole world. We can still chat. I just want to shut the recording off.
Yeah, shut the recording off. But yeah. So, because we were talking about it has to be in a live course, but our design courses are considered live, so we could go ahead and at least upload it and then decide if everybody wants to use it or not.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
That just means it has to go change the grading rubric too, but that's okay.
All right, let's stop